Finance Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, but before we start here, we'd like to have a motion to allow Commissioner Saraki to join us via Zoom.
I have mixed feelings. Move to allow Mayor Saraki to join virtually.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That was me now.
Aye. All right, and I'm Vince Cox, your committee chair representing Pinellas County. Let's go around the room and introduce our other members.
Who am I? Patty Reed, City of Pinellas Park, Councilwoman.
That's quorum, Patty Reed.
That's
Josh
quorum,
Shulman,
Patty
City of
Reed.
St. Petersburg.
Okay, thank you.
And Dan Saraki.
Dan Saraki, Mayor of the City of Oldsmar.
It's a good picture.
His microphone
We
is.
just see your chin. There you
No,
go.
we can hear you without like
using
going
his
to the
iPad.
microphone.
Okay, now's the time for public comment. Do we have any members? Public comment, please?
I don't have anything.
Okay, nothing online. All right, action items. We have a motion to approve the September 21st meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, first up, we're going to have banking services, a new bank being recommended to PSTA. And CFO Debbie Leas will give us the details.
All right, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. The action item today is to approve a contract with Synovus Bank. For the last 5 years, we have been with Bank United. They've done a very good job, but we went out for a solicitation. And one of the things that I want to talk about is what we were procuring. And we were looking at our bank accounts, our major bank accounts, which is for accounts payable and payroll, depository services, being able to get online and actually look at everything, doing things such as ACHs, Fed wires, and something, if you have any specific questions on, called Positive Pay, which also keeps fraudulent transactions down. We went and had a committee. I was an advisor on the committee. I'm going to have Al talk about the procurement. But I think one of the things that this tells everyone is, even though Bank United has done a great job for us over the last 5 years, the procurement process and how we ranked everybody really says that we're not just selecting an incumbent to select an incumbent. And I want Al to talk a little bit about the procurement process and how everyone was ranked.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. Al Burns, your highly motivated procurement director, to talk a little bit about banking services. Mayor Saraki, I just want to let you know that this procurement, we know is important to you as the agency's treasurer, and I think we're going to make things a lot easier for whoever becomes your successor after your tenure. On August 3rd, we released an RFP, and it was issued in compliance with all of our procurement policies. The solicitation was posted on PSTA's website and on Demand Star. You'll notice in your packet the table of the evaluation criteria that the proposal was evaluated on. On September 2nd, we received 3 proposals, one from Ameribank, Bank United, our incumbent, as Debbie said, and Synovus Bank. You'll see another table following that shows the actual evaluation criteria and the points that were allocated for each category, each evaluation category. On the 26th of September, we had an evaluation meeting, and below you'll see where Synovus Bank was ranked number 1, Bank United was ranked number 2, and Ameribank was ranked number 3. Debbie already talked about the integrity of the procurement process, and I was very pleased that we went with the structure that we are. It is a big, heavy lift to switch from one bank to another, and I just want to acknowledge Julie, Debbie, and all the evaluation committee members that participated in that. We did a responsibility check on Synovus, and it was determined that they have the capacity to perform the work and are therefore eligible for award. We did all the typical things, making sure they're not barred, suspended, good credit ranking, and things of that nature. The fiscal impact of this is funded by operating funds. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the DEI aspect of their proposal. Now, with our guiding principles, we're starting to include DEI as part of the evaluation criteria in majority of our RFPs. Synovus Bank Synovus has made progress toward their DEI efforts, and as of this end of this year, 66% of the team members were either women or people of color. Synovus Bank has also increased their recruiting efforts. They are going out to their campuses of historically black colleges and universities and allowing them to engage with their executive group to get and to help in their recruiting efforts. And one thing that's very, very important, at least to me, is in 2022, Synovus Bank is anticipating spending or giving back to our community over $3.25 million. I'd like to, the other day with Debbie, Brad, and I, we were talking, and Brad asked me about the $100,000, the cost of that. There are some options that Synovus Bank that we're still exploring, i.e. possibly merchant card services that has transaction fees, and also currently we use Bank of America for our P-card program. And me and my team, namely Maggie Soto, are looking at that and evaluating whether we're going to make a recommendation to Debbie and Brad to switch P-card programs. The recommendation, Mr. Chair, is recommend approval of a 3-year contract with two-year renewals for banking services with Synovus Bank for a total contract amount not to exceed $100,000, and authorize the CEO to exercise the two-year options. There is one thing that I forgot to mention. As Debbie said when she started, we had a 5-year contract with Bank United. Because it is such a heavy lift, Debbie and I decided that it'd be in the best interest of the agency to do a longer-term contract, and therefore that's why we're changing it from 5 to 7 years. If there's any questions, Debbie and I would be more than happy to answer them.
Mr. Schulman?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's $100,000 over 7 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This isn't really a question, but I did want to say I appreciate the adding the DEI aspect. I know a year ago I mentioned adding sustainability and DEI to our criteria when we look at our financial services. And I appreciate the donation to our community aspect. And I'm fine with this. I do want us to consider, though, 7 years from now, looking more, I won't be here to say it then, so.
But you'll remember, sir.
Yeah, I think it's also important when we look at these financial institutions, we look at how they're lending to small businesses in our community, how they're lending to different areas of our community, in like if it's in a CRA area for housing, what their mortgages look like. Those are investments in our community on top of just giving back to certain charities, is how are they supporting the members in our community. So those sorts of things are also important aspects when looking at the bigger piece of how they're contributing, and probably even more valuable than the $3.25 million is how they're supporting those businesses and our homeowners here.
Yes,
So
understood.
I'm perfectly fine with what's here, and I appreciate the work that you've done, and I also agree that it is a heavy lift to switch banks. It's a heavy lift to switch a credit card, let alone the whole banking system. So I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we're constantly evolving our notion of what sustainability is, and sustainability is not just environmental, it's also investing in our communities and the people that live here and work here. So no further questions or comments for this item.
I have the same question. Do we have to do this 7? Everything changes so much. Do we have to do a 7-year? Can we do a 3-year and put it back out there? Does that just cost too much? I'm new here.
That's a very good question. The way that we structure our contracts, ma'am, is we have a 3-year base, and then it's two-year options. So at the 3 years, Debbie and Julie come to me and they say, Al, they're not performing. We do not have to exercise year 5. And then after the 5th year, we have to go back, and then Debbie, or they might say, oh, you know what, it's not as, they're not performing as well. So it's not like we're going into a solid 3-year. First 3 years, then we look at it, evaluate, and I'll go to them and say, hey, do you have a recommendation? Do you want to exercise the option? They'll say yes. And then after the 5 years, they'll come, I'll go back and say, hey, it's time for the last option. Is that something that you want to enter into? With adding the language specifically authorizing the CEO to exercise the two-year options, that means that the board of directors is giving Brad the latitude to exercise that option without having to come back to the board and ask for permission.
Right. It's because the banks change so much all the time, and, you know, a different bank comes in, and what he said, they don't have our best interest. So that was just my question with that. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, and by the way, I have no relationship with Synovus, but I wanted to make clear, because you said, you know, Synovus might not be performing or might not be working out in 3 years. It might also be that there's another option in the banking system, and there's other services that can be provided by another institution that we may then engage with. So it does, if we switch, it doesn't necessarily mean, just like if we're switching now, it doesn't necessarily mean like Bank United is not a good bank or is not doing well. It's just another vendor has the things that we need more at a better price or a better overall impact to our community. I just want to make that clear. It's not that one's bad.
Right.
But we still have the option.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Did you-
Mayor Saraki, do you have any comments?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
And I have one, where are they headquartered? Where's Synovus headquartered?
Looks like South Carolina, from my Google.
My laptop is out of
Is it?
use, so I don't have that.
But they used to be in, at least they used to be, they were founded in South Carolina.
Okay. Okay, what bank did they used to be? Did anybody know?
Columbus, Georgia.
CB&T, CB&T, which I've never heard of. That's
Okay,
Was it?
okay, I'm just curious.
They
because-
bought Bank of Tampa or something like that.
Okay. Thank you. We have no more comments or questions. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move approval?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome, Mr. Chair.
Next, Debbie Leas will present the recommended interlocal funding agreement with Pinellas County for the Clearwater Center. Debbie?
Thank you so much. This is very exciting. I think this whole project at the Clearwater Multimodal Transit Center, not to be overshadowed this week by our great Sun Runner, which will be launching this week. But this is very important, I think, to our community. And PSTA has been successful, as you well know, in getting the RAISE grant. Now, I had to actually look up and say, what does RAISE stand for? Because, you know, acronyms are so big. It's Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. So we received a grant for $20 million that will be used towards construction, design, and mostly construction on this. And we were able to cobble together, in anticipation of all of this, a lot of different funding sources. So what I'm showing up on the chart, we now have a $45 million project. When we put the RAISE grant application in, it was about $10 million less than that. With inflation, supply chain issues, et cetera, the costs have risen. So we had put together, as we did the application, a project of about $35 million. So I'm coming in about $10 million short. As you can see, we have a lot of funding partners, not only what we're putting into this from our FTA grants, what we're getting from federal earmarks, Forward Pinellas, USDOT, of course, the land value from Clearwater, and FDOT, of course, a very important funding source. I'm still $10 million short. So I reached out to the county and asked them to put together, if we could work with them on an interlocal agreement of an amount not to exceed $10 million. Now, the county said, I'm a little worried, what about the risks involved in this? Number one, we've got the best team ever over here in Abhishek's PMO team, and Sunrunner looks like they'll be coming in under budget. So we take good control of our projects here at PSTA, number one. Number two, I said I will use you last in the waterfall, what I call a waterfall of funding sources. So what I'll do is use everybody else's funding sources first, and then I will use them last. So it'll be a not-to-exceed amount of $10 million. If it comes in at $3 million, I'll be billing them $3 million. I will be upfronting that money and then seeking reimbursement from them like we do for anything else. It's a 45-day prompt payment law that they follow. So I think they're comfortable with it as far as a not-to-exceed dollar amount. I think that they're very excited about the project, just like we are. We will be meeting with them on Friday. The county is working through at their end, which I have no control over, different ways and different pots of funds that they could pull this from. So that's up to them how they pay for it. I'm just happy to accept this to be able to complete the project. So the action item before you today is to approve the interlocal agreement between PSTA and the county for an amount not to exceed $10 million and to use their monies last in the project. The one thing I didn't mention is they asked if they could put a person, one of their engineers on the project to help us out with this and to be part of it, to sit at the table. And I think that is a great idea. We don't build buildings every single day here, so I appreciate any assistance and input because they do a lot more of that than we do.
Do you have a question?
I do.
Commissioner Schulman?
Just a quick question about the project representative. Are they going to be billing us hours
That
for?
was my question.
Okay, so that won't cut into the 10 million,
No.
like, well, we used our own engineer. Okay, so that's just to help make sure that they're comfortable that the project's moving forward and we're dotting all
Right.
i's, crossing all t's, and doing the best we can.
They've already taken a preliminary look at the project from a financial aspect and from an engineering aspect. And, they feel like we have a good contingency in there. I use the word robust, which is their wording on there. I'm hoping it is robust in there. And, I think it helps when they look at something, and we had looked at a couple alternatives on different things from a green aspect. And they said, we would recommend, based on our experience, do this versus that.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you'll run into costs further down the road. So already and it's not going to cost us anything to get their input. They're not going to hold us hostage on it. It's still our decisions. But I like having the expertise at the table.
I liked having the expertise too. I just wasn't sure if they were using that as a somewhat cutting into that funding. At the end of the day, I think it's a really great commitment from the county for both our agency and the whole county. So it would, in my opinion, be foolish not to move forward with the interlocal agreement.
Good, you got my question.
Okay.
That's my goal here. I'm just trying to.
The 10 million, my question, or you may have said this, that's already been approved by the county commission?
It has not.
Sadly.
It has not been yet approved by the county. I think now the date is November
14?
14th. That'll go to the county commission.
Okay.
We had hoped that it was going to be approved if the finance committee recommends it to the PSTA board next week. Our meeting is on the 25th,
Mhm.
and they were poised to approve it on the 24th.
Uh-huh.
But as of yesterday, I found out that they moved it to the 14th of November.
The election, but that shouldn't have no bearing on
It wouldn't, it would still be with the current
Right.
commissioners
it until next year.
on the 14th.
Right.
That's the goal.
Okay. That's all I got.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion to recommend the agreement with Pinellas County?
I make a motion that we do the agreement with, I already changed my screen. That we make a motion to accept the Stillwater Transit Center funding contract.
Okay.
Second.
Second, we have motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Yep, motion passes, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
I did for changing my screen too early.
Okay, now, that we have
Oh, yeah.
the funding, Abhishek will present a recommend design services contract amendment for the Clearwater Transit Center. Abhishek?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Finance Committee. Abhishek Dayal, Director of Project Management, and just following up on Debbie's presentation on the highly exciting Clearwater Transit Center project. As you all recall, last year we had issued a contract to CDM Smith to begin design for the Clearwater Transit Center. Given the cost changes, the cost did go up from about $34 million to $45 million, as Debbie had shown. We also wanted to reflect that in the contract value for CDM Smith. And so that's what this item is for, to adjust their contract limit so that it reflects the new project cost. Typically, design services range between 10 and 15% of the project cost. And we've seen that with Sunrunner also. H.W. Lochner, that was the design team. They are averaging about $4.3 million for their entire contract value, which is about 10% of the project cost for Sunrunner. And so we wanted to reflect that for CDM Smith as well. So we're looking for $735,000 in addition to their current contract limit of $2.3 million. So the new contract limit would be about 3.03, which is still under 10% of the total project cost that Debbie reflected. But we feel fairly comfortable with that contract limit, and it's included in the budget that Debbie had just specified. So that's the action item. Happy to take any questions from the committee.
I don't want to take your questions.
No, I got nothing, you go.
Okay. I'm just trying to be fair. Okay, so the cost increased due to inflation, right? That, I guess what I'm struggling with the fact, are they doing more work? So I would, if the cost increased due to a complete change in design and we asking them to do a bunch of other things, then I can expect, yes, we need to pay for additional design services. I'm struggling with paying for additional services just because the costs, right? So if the cost of wood went up, they're not doing anything more different, it just costs more for their materials. So is this something they asked for?
So some of that we negotiated with them.
Okay.
Their fee, but then there was some work that they did do extra. To your earlier point, they did complete our raised grant application. They prepared the whole thing and supported that, and that's why we were successful in getting the $20 million. So we did add a few items on their scope as part of their initial contract that we had given to them. So that obviously took away work that they were going to do for design. So some of the funds would also cover that. But on your second point, the cost, since it did go up for the project, we wanted to make sure that it was in line, the design services were in line with generally what project costs are.
No, and I understand that point, I just,
Maybe, it's not like Abhishek did a mathematical calculation, and since the cost went up, he multiplied by 10% and then called up CDM Smith and said, oh, can I give you more money? No. They called him, said, we would like to now negotiate, now that you have the funding and we've done this extra work for you, we believe we can provide you a refined estimate, and he gave Abhishek an eye-popping number, much bigger than $735,000. Abhishek, with his great skill, negotiated them down. The 735 is itemized, right, for additional work. This idea that we're raising is it was our goal to make sure that we were in line, that the total design contract was reasonable. Once Abhishek negotiated the 735, and that's why we brought up the Sunrunner being about 10%, and that's fairly industry standard.
well, and I agree that we're staying within an industry standard reasonableness. What I don't understand is, we have a contract, right, for them to do certain services, that's the contract. And I don't mind having a contract extension to pay for additional services that were provided that were not in the original contract. But just paying more because costs of other things, your building costs went up, seems strange to me. so you said the 735 is itemized as additional work. I really want to make sure that it's actually additional work. And you said that they helped, they worked getting the raised grant, which was not in the original amount. So there is something there for that. But I'm struggling with just with this increase.
The other thing I just wanted to add is typically when we award these contracts, just like we did with Lochner, we don't negotiate the entire scope for the entire duration of the contract with them. We issue them task orders. Because some of that work comes up depending on the previous work that they completed. So we had only negotiated, back when we had awarded the contract to CDM Smith, we had only negotiated a certain amount of scope for them, for the preliminary design. But we hadn't negotiated the final design, because it's all dependent on the work they had done in the previous phase. So the 2.3 million that we had awarded the contract for, that was just an estimate for how much we expect their work to be, but the negotiations determine the level of effort that they would be doing. Obviously the scope elements for the project, the raised grant support, all of that was part of the negotiation. So that's, to Brad's point, that was all negotiated for this phase, and that's what we're asking the committee to increase the contract limit for. And we did the same thing with Lochner, the exact same approach.
Right, but I thought Lochner was, there were new elements that came up, as we went through the design phase.
Exactly. And that
Right,
was-
this was originally, or it had been presented that, the cost of the project went up, so due to inflation. I mean, it says it right, total project cost for this increased due to current inflation.
Correct.
It doesn't say it increased due to elements discovered in the preliminary design phase and, new requirements being, having to be designed.
Right, no, you're exactly right. What I'm justifying is not because of the inflation. What I'm saying is that the scope elements that were negotiated on were based on the previous work that they completed. And so that was negotiated. And the cost that went up because of inflation, that lines up with the amount of work, professional services that they would typically have to incur. It's in line with that. It's within the 10% range that we typically incur.
Okay. I'm saying okay because I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if I fully get what you're saying, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So,
I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't say that there's any correlation between like the increase in cost of wood or metal and this additional allocation to design services.
So did they come back to the table and say, hey, we gave everybody a cost of living increase and now you're paying for it?
No.
Because that would be the inflation. They only are people and manpower and skill. They're not doing physical labor on the project out in the field and buying the wood. I think is that kind of where we're looking at, is that they're saying inflation went up, so we get to raise our prices.
No,
So they're doing actual work. They're actually going to the table. So why would they just not bill us per thing extra they did instead of across the board?
And that's what
Because
they
there's no
do.
itemization in here of what we're being shown went up for that money. Like, we didn't itemize it out, and not in mine unless I just didn't push the right button.
So we negotiated their labor rates when we awarded the contract. So
For 2021,
For 2021,
and then their labor rates went up.
well, there is a provision, and maybe Al can speak to that, about the escalation.
When,
Contract.
the type of procurement, excuse me, the type of procurement that is used when you procure A&E services is called CCNA. When we and we have them present to the procurement department their labor rates. And their labor rates have to be certified FDOT labor rates, and we compare that. And then procurement goes through a negotiation process to say, like, a civil engineer, why are you charging us this much for a civil engineer? We negotiate that, and we negotiate and we finalize those disciplines and those rates. As with the majority of our contracts, and especially with A&E contracts, we do have an escalation clause. I don't know it off the top of my head in my my machine is down, but I think it's a 2% or a 3% escalation clause that we have in there annually. We have multiple A&E contracts, and you're absolutely right. Some of them have come to us, I'm thinking of a couple off the top of my head, they said, hey, CPI index has gone up. I'm like, okay, yeah, really? Well, have you given all your employees an 8% pay raise? No, then how can you come to me and say, and what's your escalation anchored to? So from the labor rate perspective, we have that covered, and there is an escalation clause in there. I'd have to verify before the board meeting, but I think it is 2%, but we verify those, and they have to show us certified payrolls, and there's a whole auditing process that the procurement staff does when we award those contracts.
And that was all negotiated when we awarded them the
The original
contract
contract.
back in 2021. So this increase is not because of that negotiation that was already approved last year. What this increase is really is for the amount of hours that their engineers, the surveyors, and other staff would have to do to perform the work in this phase.
So it's a 36% increase over the contract. So what you're saying is there's now 36% more work at this point in time than there was in February of 2021?
Well, what I'm saying is, this is the amount of work that would actually be involved for the final design. That was not negotiated last year. We didn't negotiate how much work they would do for final design, because it was really dependent on the work that they did for preliminary design. That, we knew what work they were going to do. Whatever design that came out of that, we're going to do final design on that. They provided us a fee, an estimate of hours, again, how many hours for surveyors, how many hours for engineers. Whatever negotiated labor rates for those engineers and surveyors we had from last year, we got the estimate based on that. That exceeded the contract limit by $735,000, and that's what we're here.
I won't go the new, I'm
we-
new thing here again, but, so would you normally, because it's going for, they did preliminary design and now we're asking them to do the final design, correct?
Correct.
Why would we not put that out for bid then, instead of just giving it to them at a higher cost?
So the contract was awarded last year that would cover preliminary design
Okay.
and final design and design support during construction. Exact same format as we followed for Sunrunner. But we didn't negotiate the scope for final design because each one is dependent on the previous phase. So they have to complete the first phase first before they could tell us what's the scope of work that they would design for.
Mr. Chair, if I could suggest, one thing I think we need to do is include, in the packet, the breakdown of the hours and how do we get to the new number of, 3.03? So you can see that it's based on their revised, updated estimate of how many hours of work it's going to take for them to do the final design for the project, for that number. That's not in there, I reckon.
Can we see I think then maybe where we're headed is to revisit this with the numbers, and then can we see the original part of what they were doing? So then we can just look, it was before me coming on, so maybe I can look in that, I don't know if that's, and then we would see the additional addendum to what they already contracted for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just also say that for the first phase, the preliminary design, that was for $835,000 that they completed that work for. The second phase, they're requesting $2.2 million. That's what we negotiated with them for that second phase. And so when you add those two up, that's 3.035. So net increase of 735 over the contract limit that we had awarded them last year. So we're happy to provide the detailed estimates. We did do an itemized evaluation. We did our own independent cost estimate for what it would take for another engineer to do that same work. It's in line with that, with the work that they did, so we have that as well. We always do that for Sunrunner also, we did the same thing, had the same approach. We had our own independent evaluation of that level of effort.
I mean, if it's okay, Abhishek, we can come back next month.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I would recommend.
With the itemization.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also a better sense of what the scope was in the 2021 agreement and what that was to cover. Because what I'm struggling with is we haven't identified 36% more work. And unlike Sunrunner, that identified new things that came up when they were doing the design. This has not. And so that's what I need to reconcile in my mind before I'm comfortable increasing the contract value.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that and just push this off to next month. All right. You go with that, Mayor?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I agree with Mr. Schulman. I believe an increase of $10 million is kind of pretty high for an increase. So I think we need to look more into it. $10 million is a lot of money. I wish I had that in my bank.
I wish you did too. Then you wouldn't have to be mayor.
You still want to be there.
I still want to be mayor. Okay, so we'll move on to the next. Thank you all. Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you.
And thank you. We're gonna have a marketing contract agreement. We have Mrs. Whitney Fox, PSCA's Director of Marketing and Communications, introduce this amendment to our marketing contract to add funds for Sunrunner promotion. Whitney, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Finance Committee. Whitney Fox, Director of Communications and Marketing here at PSTA. I'm here, like you just mentioned, Chair, to ask to add funds to our marketing contract with Jones Worley. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the exciting week we have going on here at PSTA with the launch of our Sunrunner Bus Rapid Transit System. So as we've embarked on this monumental moment in the history of PSTA, of course, we've had all hands on deck when it comes to preparing for the launch of Sunrunner. The planning and the launch of Sunrunner has certainly increased, of course, the workload in the marketing department and all of our efforts and our resources. Yet we've been well positioned for the success of this launch because of partnerships that we have, like our contract with Jones Worley as our marketing and advertising agency. So because of their experience with planning and preparing other BRT launches with other systems, we've definitely utilized their expertise and been really fortunate to have them as an extension of our marketing team here at PSTA. So I wanted to take this opportunity to give you a little sneak peek into some of the efforts we've worked on with them and show you and talk to you a little bit about some of our advertising efforts. So we have, of course, in addition to their technical experience, expertise, they've helped us negotiate many robust multi-channel advertising strategy for the Sunrunner service, including, of course, TV, broadcast, radio, billboard, digital, and social media advertising. Some examples of the work that we've done with them, door hangers that are targeting homes along the Sunrunner route, our direct mail that's targeting apartment buildings along the route, and of course, print ads and magazines. We also have some examples here for you of some of our digital ads that you might see on Facebook or while you're browsing the web. And then here are some examples of our exciting digital billboards. I'm not sure if you've seen it on I-275, counting down to the launch of Sunrunner.
Saw this morning.
Oh, great. And then also our retail and restaurant posters that will be up on different businesses and storefronts along the route. They also have helped put together a how-to ride guide, Sunrunner brochure that many of our volunteers for the launch this Friday and throughout the first week of service will be handing out to those who are coming out to ride Sunrunner and try it out. We also have done updates to our website and our landing page, our mobile first QR code landing page, making it easy for anybody who is a rider or would like to try Sunrunner to get the information that they need, including a deep dive webpage about the service. As well as, we've done many media strategy efforts such as Taste and See, Segment, The Morning Blend, PSTA.net's own newsroom, blogs, and news articles about the Sunrunner and its launch. And this is just a sneak peek into some of the efforts and work that we've done with Jones Worley, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you some of that work and because we're very excited about it. But ultimately, like I mentioned, today's the goal and the reason for me being here is to add funds to the contract, and I'll send it over to Mr. Al Burns to speak to that more specifically.
Thank you, Whitney. Mr. Chair, Al Burns, Procurement Director. Along with the DEI, I just wanted to highlight and be a point of interest that Jones Worley is a DBE, certified DBE in the state of Florida. They are based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And when we brought their original contract to PSTA, they did a short presentation to show us exactly the good work that they do. This contract was awarded in June of, I can't remember what year, June of 2020. And the contract was awarded in June of 2020, and that was before we have received the grant for Sunrunner or the BRT. That's important to know, is when we first originally awarded this contract, we did not have the BRT grant in place. This contract was, the contract is going from $900,000 to 1.6 over 5 years. And we're in year 2, so we have 3 more years to go in this contract. So you might ask, why add $750,000? Well, you know we're working on the multimodal center. There's going to be a lot of media attention towards that, and we're probably going to need that money. We're asking for $750,000, but it doesn't mean that we'll necessarily have to spend $750,000. Whitney talked about different things, radio and digital advertising and things of that nature. And in procurement language, that translates into media buys. And media buys have a significant cost to them. And I'll be very candid and transparent that I am just learning how to do media buys. When I first came into the industry, there wasn't Facebook and TikTok and all these different things. What is it? TikTok and all these different social media outlets where you have to go and you have to actually buy. So my staff and I, we're learning how to do that and learning how to buy. But that was one of the things that we incorporated in the Jones Worley contract, was for them to be able to do media buys on behalf. In the media buys, they have a significant price tag to them. The other things, yes, they cost, and you have to pay for they have to pay for the design and things, but the media buys had a significant price, and they paid those on our behalf, and we came back and we basically tried to make them whole. The important thing from a procurement and a fiscal perspective is that we have not gone over on the Jones Worley contract. There are, I don't know the exact dollar amount, I can look that up, but we do have some limited funds remaining in there. But one of the things that you know, Mr. Chair and committee members, before we go, we will not go over what the board approves. So we're just coming here, being good fiscal stewards, being prudent, and requesting the money to be added. With that, the fiscal impact of this is it's funded by operating funds and capital reserve funds. And the recommendation before you again, Mr. Chair, is recommend approval of an additional $750,000 to be added to the existing contract with Jones Worley to be spent over the course of the remaining life of the contract, which is 3 years. If there's any questions, Whitney or I will be more than happy to answer them.
So this is,
Commissioner Schulman?
thank
Now we're
you.
going to the same place, I know, go ahead.
So, so this is for additional work that wasn't in the original contract.
I-
We're, we asked them to provide marketing services, but the scope of those marketing services has increased because we now have the Sunrunner, and we're doing a lot more marketing in that vein than we were originally.
Absolutely correct.
So we're burning through our dollars. We hadn't included a marketing budget for the Sunrunner in the original contract. Okay.
Man, I wish I could have said that during the dry run. Sorry.
No worries. Sometimes it's helpful to repeat things, that way I see if my understanding is what is true. Okay, so, and this is going to be, this is not what will be spent, this is what's available to be spent over the next 3 years.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. I don't know if I got Commissioner Reed's question or not.
You did.
All right,
No, that's exactly what it's like, okay, we're doing the same thing again, or did we just add, like, did they have to add a person to take on that? But they're not forgetting the rest of what we need them for the rest of our services.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Commissioner, or Mayor?
I think I'm good, Josh. Josh answered my one question, but my question for Deb, do we have the money for this increase?
Yes, we do.
It's coming out of your salary.
Yes, we do.
All right.
Yeah, 10 million.
A lot of money for marketing, for paper and design.
All right, so we seem to be good. Do we have a motion?
No paper.
Move approval.
Second?
Second,
Okay, we have a motion in 2 seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you,
Thank you,
Al.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Next, Al,
IT.
PSDA's Chief IT Officer Julie and others will have several software license renewals. Al?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm just smiling because it's a lot of work that we did for this. And to kick us off, the action item, 1-year contract with Clever Devices Limited for an amount not to exceed $300,000. 3-year contract with Remix Inc. an amount not to exceed $166,000. 3-year contract with Urban Transportation Associates for an amount not to exceed $164,000. And we have a group of people that are going to get this, but I would like to start off with my colleague, Mr. Julie Cagliostro.
Good morning, everyone. Julie Cagliostro, Chief Information Officer here at PSTA. Today, I'm going to introduce the Clever Devices portion of this contract, and Clever Devices provides our ITS systems for the fleet, and this comprises a major part of the backbone of fleet monitoring and management. These systems are highly integrated, and we must keep the contract up to date, as I'm sure you're aware, and Clever's the only provider, so there's not much of a choice. What I wanted to let you know is that currently 80% of the fleet is utilizing the original equipment from 2010, when we first implemented this system, and we are planning a major retrofit, thanks to Henry, this year. So we are only taking 1-year contracts at this time and not negotiating over a period of years. Clever is honoring good pricing, but the 80% equipment that's listed on the fleet will be end of life in May of 2023. So basically, the items that I thought that I would note for you would be that included in the contract is our software maintenance, but we also have quality assurance that occurs every run bid, which is part of the fees, so that we can assure that everything in the database is correct, and there's oversight from Clever on that. And we also have, in this contract, which was unique, we've added a small stipend for Clever to help us in between run bids when there's changes to ensure quality and make sure that all the changes to the database are actually correct and implemented to the fleet properly. And another fee that's included in that contract is engineering fees. And the last couple of years, we're a stable customer. We haven't really taken advantage of that. But this year, we're introducing contract management, content management. I have contracts on my mind. And we really may have to take the option to have Clever come in with the Sunrunner and provide some additional engineering and maybe some re-engineering, I'm going to say, to our systems. to make sure that we are keeping a good customer experience. That's all I have to say for Clever. I would like to turn it over to my partners, Jacob Labuca, and he will introduce Remix.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning. So I'm Jacob Labuca, Senior Planner here at PSTA. So I'm going to introduce the Remix portion. So Remix is a really great cloud-based transit planning tool that allows the planning team and others to be able to quickly analyze how our transit services serve both our residents as well as how many jobs that routes connect to. So we can very quickly do scenario planning for short-range changes as well as long-range plans that we're considering, such as plans that are in our TDP. So we can quickly come up with cost estimates as well as fleet requirements for what it would take to operate service changes in future plans. We also utilize the software for our Title VI analyses, which are federally required analysis to assess how our service changes affect low-income and minority communities. Some of you may recall earlier this year that we did an equity analysis for our Sunrunner service, and so Remix was a very instrumental tool for us to be able to conduct that analysis. They're also constantly adding new features, such as the ability to make presentation-ready maps and be able to quickly determine the demographics by corridor and even by neighborhood. So it's a really powerful tool for us to be able to quickly assess the characteristics of our services and neighborhoods that we serve. And with that, I'm going to pass my imaginary baton over to Heather to talk about UTA.
Hi, Heather Sobush, to talk a little bit about Urban Transportation Associates piece of this. Urban Transportation Associates, or UTA, is the provider of our automatic passenger counters, and this is the primary way that we track ridership, which of course is very important to PSTA. Over the last few years, we've been really moving to use the APCs to track all of our ridership and submit required reports to the National Transit Database, or NTD. It's also the data you see on your monthly board report. And it's also the way that we inform decision-making around passenger amenities and service enhancements and how we will track Sunrunner ridership. So, very important to us. And I'll pass it back to Al.
Thank you, Heather, Jacob, and Julie. In procurement, there's a term called bundling, and I'm trying to classify that here, or multi-year contracts. Especially with today's market fluctuating, going up and down, what I try to do is we try to lock in the rates over multiple years. So also, when you do multiple year contracts, normally you get economies of scale by, hey, they'll give us a 15% discount here or there, or things of this nature. I want to circle back to what Julie said and just emphasize that with all the different features and equipment that we currently have for our CAD system, which Clever is all about, is our CAD computer automated dispatch. That's what CAD is. With all the changes, Sunrunner, the modems, and some other technology that Henry's going to talk about later, Clever and PSTA, we came to the mutual agreement that, hey, right now isn't a good time to do a multi-year agreement. So next year around this time, you'll see us come back before you with a multi-year agreement now that everything with Sunrunner and our fleet is kind of stabilized. Inside your packets, you'll see a matrix or a table, and Brad talked to me about this, and I forgot. One of the term for the remix is going from 2022 to 2025, so it is multiple year. I didn't change that. And then also, you'll notice that some of the pricing for remix is 166, and then UTA, or Urban Transit Associates, is 164. I'm going to change that to 160. So I apologize for missing those. The fiscal impact of this. All these software licenses and different softwares that we utilize, they all reside in Ms. Cagliostro's IT budget. So, but she is not the end user that uses these. And she's done a yeoman's job And I'd like to thank her for coordinating and talking to all the departments and helping me go through the negotiations on each one of these contracts. They are budgeted for, and like I said before, they are in Julie's budget. From a DEI perspective, sustainability, like I said, we get discounted savings due to multiple-year contracts, or what I call bundling, or bundling the contracts. In some of these contracts that we're entering into, we participate in what are known as group contracts, and the procurement term for that is consortium buys. And when you do that, it saves staff time from having to go out and trying to procure something that we know we have. And we go out and we, for lack of better terms, piggyback off of someone else's contract. From an environmental perspective, all of these softwares are based in the cloud that we're bringing before you. So that removes the duplication efforts and the energy costs that are here from having servers in our own facility. Mr. Chair, the recommendation that we bring before you this morning is recommend approval for 1-year contract with Clever Devices Limited for an amount not to exceed $300,000. 3-year contract with Remix Software Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $166,000. And if it's okay, I'm not sure if I could do this as a verbal, looking at Brad's giving me an acknowledgement. A 3-year contract with Urban Transportation Associates for an amount not to exceed $160,000. And we'll change that before it goes to the Board of Directors. If there's any questions, Heather, Jacob, Julie, or I will be more than happy to answer.
Commissioner Shulman?
Thanks. I'm here till the next meeting, so I'm going to just fill the time with questions. So if I understand, are we currently using all of these software vendors?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we didn't necessarily go out to bid because in Clever's case, they're the only one that provides that, and the other two were piggybacking on other procurements that have done in the past, other bids that are out there. So
Yes,
we
sir.
have to-
And to elaborate on that, in accordance with the Florida statute, we do post these sole sources on our website. And if anyone says, hey, we could do the same type of work, we have to take that under consideration. In this case, no one did after we posted it.
Okay. Then honestly, the only other question, and it's minor, if we have a firm fixed price, say of UTA of 153, 591, 51, why are we asking for 164 or 166? Is that due to
Great.
like increases that are built into potentially like inflation adjusters in the contract?
I don't want to disagree, but
Feel free, it's okay.
well, I'll say it a different way. How about that? All these software companies, particularly, and I'm looking over at Heather and Jacob for concurrence in this, they are always developing new features within their programs. So what I wanted to do was leave a little bit of, I want to say, float or buffer in that, because Jacob might come to me and say, Al, they just came up with this new thing, and da-da-da, we really, when you see how fast he talks, it's like, I'm like, okay, yes, I get it. But in all seriousness, if that additional $1,500, if we put these to the exact dollar amount, I say, yes, Jacob, we could do it, but hold on, we're going to have to take it to Finance Committee and the board, because once again, we cannot go over the board authorized dollar amount.
Okay, so
Probably would be
specific,
more with just a little bit of a cushion. It wouldn't be a whole upgrade, it would be more like, there was a hurricane and it wiped out, it messed up, Julie says it messed up the automatic passenger counter laser beams somehow. And we have to get them to come out, and we have to pay them $2,000 to have their guy fly out from Salt Lake City, I think, and fix it, or something like that.
So.
fair enough.
I would like to add, additionally, specifically for UTA, passenger counting, we are moving to the web version as we said, and what happens is, as the programs evolve and the new features come out, we like the flexibility to be able to take advantage of them during the life of the contract. So we found that when we first started this with Heather and Jacob, we would all come in and we would give you the exact amount of our contract, especially we did it with the licensing, and then we were here 4 times. Because we added employees, and also in the case of UTA, if we add buses, some of those are device contracts. So it does build in the flexibility for us to grow the contracts in small ways within the life of it, without having to keep coming back and asking for, these smaller amounts over time.
At the end of the day, we can't do cardinal changes, but these little changes that we're talking about.
Understood, and I appreciate the clarification. I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mayor? Do you have any questions or comments, or? Okay, thank you, Mayor.
You're muted.
No, that's.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Dan.
He's multitasking.
Thank you.
Mayors are very important people. They have to do multiple things at once.
Imagine Miami. All right.
Whitney, did you get
Oh,
Henry?
I'm so
Over
sorry.
there.
Ready
We're
for
already-
onboard 5G?
Yep.
Okay, on board 5G. Next is to purchase upgraded 5G equipment for all PSTA buses. Maintenance Director Henry Lukasik and Al Burns will present this item. Good morning, Henry.
Good morning. So before we get to what is a 5G and what is a router, I'd like to say that 22 years ago, when I got started driving a transit bus, you had manual fare boxes, you had a radio, and you probably changed your destination sign with a pull cord. And you had some paper schedules behind you. Flash forward to today, buses are not just things that pick people up and take them where they need to go. They're intelligent vehicle systems. And there's a lot behind that that allows that to be accomplished. First and foremost, before I get into this, I want to say that this is an action item to approve a purchase for routers and associated equipment for a purchase not to exceed $651,000. This is fully federally funded, and this is actually a multi-phase project, which is, as you know, if you rode our newest trolleys and of course our Sunrunner buses, that they have the latest in passenger amenities with Wi-Fi, actually exceptional Wi-Fi, the customer content screens that are on there, and a whole host of other things. So that's eventually what we want to get to with the existing fleet that we have right now. All of our newest buses, electric buses coming in will have the same equipment. So, 3 terms as we go through this very quickly. What is a modem? Basically, think of that as your ears, right? A modem listens for a connection to the internet to get all the data to where it needs to go. That's all it really does, is this connection. You got your router, which you can think of as the mouth, which is it talks to all the other networks and sends information back and forth, and of course you got a switch, which looks at all the devices and connects them together and allows them to work with each other. Now, what does all that mean? This is a typical PSTA bus. So all of the softwares that you heard in the previous action item, those are all softwares to make these things work on the bus. So whether it's the CAT AVL system, which tells our dispatchers, but also the public where the bus is, predictive arrival times, to the fare boxes, to the Flamingo validator systems, our radio systems, the passenger Wi-Fi. What we're adding for Sunrunner is traffic signal beacons, and of course our passenger counters and our destination signs. So these are all technologies that are on the bus. And that's fine, but how do we get from the bus to where it needs to go? And that's what this shows. See, all of these technologies were added piecemeal over time at PSTA. 2010, CAD AVL, real time. Antenna on the roof, modem. Then came camera systems, antenna on the roof, modem. Flash forward, most of our buses have 8 antennas and used to have 8 modems on them, and that's really not the efficient way to go. Now, as Commissioner Schulman would say on the financial markets, timing is everything, and it's no different than with technology because it's constantly going back and forth. So we've waited for the right product to come along in order to accomplish a consolidation of technologies into one single system, router modem, which then can transmit all this where it needs to go. Satellite, public cellular for our passengers, private cellular, and then all of that stuff comes back to the terminal, which is managed by an information network system. As we all know, 3G went away, and a lot of people, well, were a little surprised by that. They picked up their Cricket phone and it didn't work anymore. And that kind of happened to PSTA. A lot of our devices were 3G on the bus. Now, this, on most of our buses, is what is accomplishing this, right here. This little guy, this little thing right here. That's what most of our buses are running. So when we hear that the Wi-Fi, I can't connect, and why is real-time delayed, is because this is all that's really on the buses. So it is time for an upgrade. Now the product, and this is just one component, you heard me mention several others. I want to introduce you to the Cradlepoint R1900. It's bigger, it's ruggedized, okay? It obviously allows many connections that can support all of those, and what, guess what? One antenna. That's it. And a sophisticated back office system. This is the router. The other pieces I didn't bring with me are the modem and the switch, and of course a 6-way antenna. So this represents the best that is out there now for the long haul. This is public service rated. So first responders, EMS, police, these are what is powering their systems, or will be. So this has a service duty life of approximately 10 years. This is, most importantly, 5G ready out of the box. Not can be enabled at another time with another component, ready to go once it gets here. It's not here yet in Tampa Bay area, but 4G LTE supports Wi-Fi 6. If any of this means anything to anybody, you know that this is good stuff, all right? Cat 20, 801 ACAX rated, right? What does that mean? This is like a Tesla going from 0 to 200 miles an hour in 2 seconds, okay? This is dial-up. This is dial-up, right? This can pass gigabytes through it, maybe a megabyte, all right? So, with that, I'll let Al talk to you a little bit about the solicitation, and then we'll come back.
Thank you, Henry. In August, we released an invitation for bid. It was in compliance with all our policies and procedures. It was posted on 2 websites, PSTA and DemandStar. Procurement's all about competition. And we received 7 bids for this. And the table is below. And RCN Communications LLC came in with the lowest bid. Since RCN was a new company, we did a Duns and Bradstreet because of the dollar amount to make sure that they're good, they're sound financially, and they passed. We also checked the BARDA suspended in the state of Florida list, as we do on all contracts that we bring before you. As Henry said, this is federally funded, and it's going to be paid by grant funds. From a DEI perspective, I'll be real brief. It's a woman-owned business. They only have they have a small staff, 27 males, 7 females, 5 of them are veterans. From a sustainability perspective, I'll just, we had a good chuckle on this. Coffee is made via refillable K-cups instead of disposable K-cups. And they do promote recycling, and they have a heavy, strict policy against plastic water bottles and straws. Talked to the company, and they were surprised that we were asking about this, but they understood and they were very supportive and just gave us a laundry list and showed us exactly from a sustainability and DEI perspective. Mr. Chair, at the end of the day, the recommendation is recommend approval of a purchase order to RCA Communications LLC in an amount not to exceed $651,000. If there's any questions, Henry and I will be more than happy to answer them.
All righty. Any questions, Mr. Schultz?
No, I just want to say, Henry, you've come a long way. Your 8021A, no. I don't want to jinx the technology, but just impressed. It's commissioner approved, guys.
I have one quick question.
Commissioner Boyd?
With the 5G, they're not, it's not like a cell tower going around that other people can access, where they should be paying us to use it.
The Wi-Fi on the buses?
Yeah.
They-
Like outside, I mean, riders on the bus can use it, and that's great, but with 5G technology, it kind of bounces between signals, between the boxes, much like in our city, we have 5G towers, and they pay us to put it on top of our water tower and so forth. With these 5G boxes, are they gonna be, is that company gonna be using it to sell to other companies as sell points?
No.
No. She's like, no. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we're
Yeah, so-
paying
so
them
we're not-
for
we're
it,
not-
but they're not selling our buses moving around as additional.
We're not providing 5G, we're
Sorry.
connecting to the 5G network that exists. This is our connection to the network. if I
We're not
understand
providing it on, the buses, I mean, the boxes aren't like the 5G emitting, because it says
No.
it goes to, okay. Just
No,
making
we're-
sure, thank you.
We're providing the Wi-Fi, which only really has an effective range of a couple hundred feet.
Okay, perfect, thank
So
you.
you'll get it for like 3 seconds as the bus goes
As
by.
it goes by. Yeah, just making sure, because
Or
this
if
just
you're
came
parked
up,
next
so
to
I was
the
like,
bus.
nice, thank
I
you.
commonly just drive next to buses just so I can use the Wi-Fi.
I saw you.
Mr. Chair?
Wondered.
Yes, sir.
I just have one comment, Henry, I think this is amazing, I think this is gonna increase ridership. This is a total asset for our bus system, and I'm excited about G5.
Thank you, Commissioner.
For an airplane.
I can't even contain myself.
I can
Well, then we need to move on.
that you are like right now.
Move approval.
Awesome. Yes, second. Yeah.
And we have a motion by Commissioner Shulman, a second by Commissioner Boyd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Henry. You're always entertaining. Thank
And
you.
you're up again.
He's gonna be more.
Oh, boy.
Again.
Wait till he talks about AI.
Okay, so, well, we call up the next PowerPoint. So I'm sure some of you have, in your sneak preview, said, what is this? What is artificial intelligence and why is Henry talking about it? So, just like we use big data for everything else to drive results, whether it's financial performance, on-time performance, believe it or not, you can utilize big data to predictively tell you if something is going to fail on a vehicle before it happens. We are there. You just need a mechanism to do it. So while the fleet division does collect lots of data, it's actually a little bit behind, right? So we can take previous data and try and forecast a result. This actually does it on a machine learning level and tells us in advance what could possibly go wrong with the vehicle. So before we get started, the software is called Pretect. It's an up-and-coming system that is actually on test. It's not only at PSTA, we've done it the past year on a 22-bus test fleet, and I can tell you it has a 97% accuracy record, right? So, of course, it's going into New York, and I know out at Sound Transit in Washington. And a lot of that is driven by the fact, because there is a shortage of technicians in the industry, and that doesn't need any further explanation. So, preventative maintenance, because this is a shift for fleets, right? Preventative maintenance was always the go-to. It's based off assumptions and schedules. When's the bus come in? We look at it, right? Typically for us, it's every 4 or 5 weeks we see the buses over and over and over again. Predictive maintenance, again, using that data that's collected in real-time equipment monitoring. So each bus would have a device on it that does nothing but records and analyzes anomalies on all the computer systems on the bus. And utilizing that data, they can forecast problems before they occur. And obviously, if you can predict the future in anything in life, guess what? You're doing pretty good. So what is it exactly? Well, it is artificial intelligence because it does incorporate machine learning. It takes all that data, okay, analyzes it, and then tells us, the technicians, the humans, what to do. Now, believe it or not, on a typical bus, there can be over 17,000 different point of failure codes. 17,000, all right? That's quite a lot. And what that AI does is, puts it all together, and it creates what we like to call actionable insights. And it really is the equivalent of having a technician on a bus 24/7, 365 that never gets tired. Don't have to feed it, it has no feelings, right? It just sits there listening. But we still need human beings to take all that. Now, what does that look like to you and me? Data points, all different data points for all different monitoring systems on the vehicle. Where you can see is that data points that fall outside what it considers the normal operating range gets flagged. That's what it also looks like graphically to us. And what ends up coming out, these are two examples, all right, where a particular vehicle was flagged on a particular sensor. I like using 19103 here. We received an email that basically said, check this sensor. The sensor has something to do with the after treatment on our latest diesel hybrid buses, that it is out of the realm of normal parameters. Go check it. Right? Now, we would never have seen this in the past. The bus would have thrown a check engine light, technician go out, a lot of time. Or it might have wound up as a road call. In this particular situation, we were notified early. We diagnosed the vehicle, confirmed that the sensor was actually on its way out to fail. Before fail, right? So the way I equivocate this is, as I mentioned in our rehearsal meeting, was we all have tire pressure sensor systems on our new cars, right? You get two. One, check tire pressure. Two, tire pressure low or flat, right? But nowhere do our cars proactively send us a message that says, FYI, over the last 5 days, you've lost 1 pound PSI in your tire. You might want to check it. You go out, oh yeah, there's a nail. Man, I'm glad I didn't make that big trip. So for all of those benefits above, again, technology is the critical element of the future for both electric buses and the future of autonomous vehicles, which is interactive communications and learning, interactive communications with these vehicles, smart vehicles. So Al, I'll let you talk about this from a solicitation standpoint, but it is an action item to approve a one-time, one-year program in the amount not to exceed $141,000.
Thank you, Henry. Mr. Chair, I just want to give a shout out. We brought a lot of action items to you this morning, and I just want to give a shout out to the procurement team. They're the ones who work with everyone to make all of these things happen, and I couldn't be more happier in the result. As Henry said earlier, we did a pilot, and that shows that we're being good fiscal stewards by doing a pilot initially. We did it a pilot for a full year. I'm just sitting here and I'm looking that we did it around February of 2021. And the amount wasn't anything that warranted having to come anywhere close to the board. But we came back and we did another, we treated this as a sole source. And we posted it in accordance with the Florida statutes. It has to be posted for 10 or 7 days on our website and give other vendors an opportunity to bid on things of this nature. No one showed any interest, so we moved forward on March 14th. There was no interest shown from anybody, so we're moving forward. This project is funded with maintenance operating funds, and it is a budgeted line item in the budget. As Henry said, just for the redundancy, the recommendation before you this morning is recommend approval of a one-time purchase of a one-year program with Pre-Tech in an amount not to exceed $141,000. If there's any questions, Henry and I would be more than happy to answer them.
Mr. Shaw?
Thanks. So it's a one-time purchase of a one-year program. So at the end of 1 year, we no longer have the software, or do we have the software and they just won't support it? What happens? at the end of 1 year?
We will have the software, and at that time, I think there's a maintenance agreement. I didn't have the time to look. So it'll be just like everything else that we have. We'll just have to pay an ongoing maintenance agreement for patches and updates and things of this nature.
Okay, and Henry, it's your expectation that, I know it's hard to quantify what's not gonna happen, but based on the experience in the pilot, you expect a savings of greater than $141,000 in time, parts?
We saw approximately a $2,000 savings per year per bus in the test flight. And really that is attributed to wasted time, misdiagnosis, comebacks.
It's also hard to quantify, a bus breaking down with passengers on it and what that does to the cost to the community. So I realize that there's more there. I just wanted to make sure that we're at least addressing that. And then the only other thing I have is, I'm fine with it as long as it's called the Minority Report software.
Looks like that.
That's all I have.
Okay, we'll put that caveat on there. Any more questions? All right. We have a motion.
Faith in Henry.
Do we have a motion? What's that now?
Go ahead. I just said I have faith in him.
Okay, yeah, so,
I have a motion that we approve the contract, yeah, thank you. The Intelligent Vehicle Diagnostic Equipment contract.
okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Second by Commissioner Schulman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes, thank you,
Thank you. I'll be happy to come back and do a live demonstration once we.
Okay, well, thank you. Diane, we have Diane Randall, PSTA's Director of Risk Management, going to talk about a claim settlement. Hi, Diane.
Good morning. Diane Randall, Director of Risk Management. I'm here this morning for an action item to obtain approval to go forward with a claim settlement in the amount of $45,000 with Melanie Wolpert. On September 20th, 2019, Ms. Wolpert was a passenger on one of our buses that was involved in a collision that was our fault, so we do have liability against us in this accident. And as a result, she sustained injuries to her low back and neck, which resulted in $62,000 in medical expenses. The fiscal impact is that this settlement is within our established claim file reserves. And for sustainability, the case is in litigation, so settling now will end all exposure to future medical and defense costs. So again, I'm seeking approval for a settlement in the amount of $45,000 with Melanie Wolpert.
Okay, do you have any questions? Yes.
So this is just so I have a better understanding. When we say $62,000 of medical expenses, are those billed expenses, or the negotiated expenses of what's actually out of pocket. And as
Okay.
someone who's just experienced that,
Yeah.
those numbers are
There's-
vastly different.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, especially in litigated cases right now, and they're called letters of protection. So even if someone has insurance, they're not utilizing their insurance, and they're just making deals with the doctors to give me my treatment, and then when I settle my claim, you'll get paid. And we're having, that's why you're seeing me so frequently, is because this is happening a lot, and it's causing the value of cases to go up. Because normally we would just go on what is paid, but because they're using letters of protection, we don't have the same leverage that we used to have.
So, but they've presented $62,000 in what they've called expenses.
Yep.
Whether that's actually what is received by the
That's-
professional providing services. is a
That's
different
what the
story.
doctor bills for their services. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And
That's
I
the
mean,
top
this
line
one
number.
did not even have surgery, and it's $62,000.
Okay, thank you.
So,
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, aye.
Thank you.
And, thank you, Diane. Now we will go to the monthly financial statement with Julie Lupus.
Good morning, I'm Julie Lucas, Director of Accounting. Happy to be masked for a few moments. For the month of August, we finished with a net deficit of $7.4 million, which was $5.7 million unfavorable to budget. $5.3 million of this is related to the deferring of the grant revenue for future years. Operating revenues were $34,000 over budget, being driven by interest income. On the expense side, we finished $412,000 over budget, driven partly by fuel expense being $308,000 over budget. Although on my first read of this, the number is much better than we expected it to be when we were sitting around 6 months ago looking at fuel prices.
Told you so.
Insurance expense is $151,000 over budget due to the change in the methodology and recording of our actuarial expenses that we've discussed previously. Purchase transportation is showing increased ridership on MOD and decreased ridership on Access, which is very favorable. So if we turn to our August year-to-date now, we finished $30 million unfavorable to budget. Again, $29 million of that is related to the deferring of the COVID relief dollars to future years, offset in part by utilizing the state grant funds due to expire in December. They are now fully utilized. For year-to-date expenses, we are $91,000 over budget. Fuel is $1.5 million over budget, offset by decreases in services expenses, Access program expense, as well as almost every other category on the list. So if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them on August's financials.
It's not a question. I just want to say thank you for breaking out the grant revenues. It makes that much more clear at a glance when looking at that.
You weren't here last month when we presented it in this way for the first time, so we were going with this.
I am late
second
in my
time,
thank yous, so.
Hoping, wonderful, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Debbie will briefly outline the PSDA contracts. Debbie?
Thank you so much, Chairman. The contracts report is in your packet, and I'd like to just sort of bring attention. The top two cost contracts are David Nelson Construction with the Sunrunner, which over probably the next few months will be winding down with anything, little punch list items that we have on there. So that will be closing out. And then Gillig is our second one. That was the contract that the board approved last December for the purchase of 60 electric buses. We've already placed the last order on that, and by doing so, we will be able to save some money that I'm going to put into the electric infrastructure on some of the grants. So I'm very excited about being able to do that because we cannot let a purchase order unless we have funding in hand. With the VW settlement money, that allowed us to do that. So I'm very excited about that. And I don't know if there's any other questions on our other contracts, but the top two, you'll be, well, it'll take a while for Gilly to go away because we won't pay for it for probably the next few years.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any comments, questions?
I never questioned Debbie.
Okay.
I'll be doing the rest of the reports for the rest of the year for everybody.
Brad, how about ridership and access reports?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I put an asterisk until I check a little bit more into this, but ridership was up an incredible amount, a slightly unbelievable amount, considering that in the month of September, we did not operate for 3 days during Hurricane Ian. So, not sure how it could have gone up by 20%. So I got to check on that. But otherwise, you know, a year ago, September 2021, I do know that that was the first month that we rolled out Flamingo to 100% of our customers. So perhaps maybe 2021 was artificially low. I'm not sure. And then on the PSC Access Accountability Report, we had another fairly good month with our complaints coming down a little bit. They've rolled out, I think it's still in test mode, but they're starting to use the driver brakes, which is a good thing. It's helping with on-time performance too, hopefully. And we had a good conversation, and Al Burns and I had a good conversation with them, with both First Transit and our software provider when we were at our conference last week. So. Other business, sir, if any of you are heading out, we hope to see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Downtown St.
Oh, yeah,
Petersburg,
what time?
2 p.m.
2 p.m.?
2 p.m.
Okay,
A little before 2.
a little before 2.
We'll see you, Mayor, hopefully up for a little bit.
I will be there tomorrow at 2 o'clock, ready to go.
Unless there's traffic in Oldport.
All right, with that, let's adjourn this meeting. Move on to the next.
Brad, were there other, there was another format for the report. Did that just kind of fizzle?
No, it's not this.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm not gonna let it.
Okay, but it's not
ready.
Enjoyable, I
It's
love
not
it.
activated.
Oh, thank you.
I say everybody's so enjoyable.
It's always nice to see you for that.
You guys are nice to each other, you're beautiful.
Is it cold in here?
No, I'm cold all the time.
It's gonna snow outside.
Amanda.
Here.
Quite.